journey. Rocket will be sent back to the fountain.
It was quite tough for me to play with support that's not Yellowstar.
Yellowstar is back to Europe and he will probably show us.
North America was definitely a great experience. I'm not regretting it at all. I feel more comfortable in Europe. I'm way more happier here, so, you know.
Beat me up, Scotty. Yellowstar making his way on the front line.
I still think that in TSM, people just didn't trust him. That's why he didn't look so good.
An insane performance and one that Fnatic can be proud of.
They're going to be really strong. Bring like a more team-oriented play style into H2K.
Freeze has gone really deep. He's taken Steel back down.
I don't think he's better than Forgiven, but I think he's still an upgrade.
We will see more optimal ways to play the game. It's going to be crazy.
Hello and welcome to the LCS studios in Berlin, Germany, where we're at the halfway point in week 2 of the summer split. And with all the shakeups across the league, anything can happen once we get on the Rift. You're getting a look at the action on the ground where our fans were lining up a little while ago. Our cosplayers are here once again as well, super amped up, as well as Rocket setting up on stage in the studio and Splyce getting amped as well before their game versus G2 Esports. Of course, G2 yesterday dropping a game, so we'll see what happens today. Good evening, I'm Eve, your show supporter, ready to cover all of today's matchups with the help of James Stress O'Leary, Andy Vedius Day, and Trevor Quickshot Henry. Nailed that, although I said Trevor instead of Trevor.
It's okay, he doesn't mind.
It's okay. Let's take a look at what is really important, the standings. Obviously, we now have 2 teams in first place. G2 is joined by Fnatic, and OG is finally on the board with 1 point, and they're in third place, tied Splyce after a 2-0 win over Schalke.
You could say it's a bit of a surprise, but it shows you what a dominating victory does. 2-0 gets you those 3 points, jumps Splyce right up in the standings. It's been a good start for the young squad in the summer split.
It's going to be fun to see how the tables progress throughout the split for teams who are unable to pick up those convincing 2-0s. But I think the biggest story of yesterday's games is just how messy some of those games were. It is a new patch. There were a lot of new champions, but overall, things just felt a bit sloppy, a bit rough around the edges, and I'm hoping for it to be cleaner.
Yeah, we have to be honest about that. The level was not high in most of the games we saw yesterday, and as you mentioned, a lot of new picks, 11 new picks here in week 2. Vedius, Ilaoi, Anivia, Yasuo, Kha'Zix.
While it is fun to see a lot of these new picks, not all of them were quite as optimally used as we would have liked to see. The Ilaoi, for one, putting it in that style of composition, not really the optimal way to play her, but hopefully moving forward and with a lot of changes in this patch, team will get a little bit better at using these new picks and we'll see better play out of them.
And to take a look at some of the picks that maybe are a little more commonly expected now, I think those 4 picks, some we'll see again, but some will drop off. The Zyra is the one that I want to pick up on the bottom lane. We're seeing a big shift in supports now, a lot of damage coming from that, a lot of crowd control, expecting to see more Zyra, especially paired with that Ashe.
If we have to give up a little bit of the level of play to see these crazy picks, I don't mind, actually. So we'll see what happens today as the meta madness continues with Splyce and G2 going at it in the LCS arena or on stream EU LCS 1, while Vitality and Rocket start the day in the studio on EU LCS 2. Now, later on, Schalke go up against Origin, but not before our match of the week between H2K and Fnatic, who are just 2 points apart in the standings, and Fnatic are now defending their #1 spot.
They are defending the #1 spot, and I think they're the favorite going into that series. I think if you look at Fnatic's wins from yesterday, they were very convincing. They punished their opponent's mistakes very well. And H2K were a little sloppy against Giants. You know, Giants, they remained as this death ball. They gave H2K challenges, and I still keep expecting more from H2K. I wonder at what point do they start kicking in, if they even can.
Yeah, do you guys think H2K might win it?
Oh, it's a tough one. I think Fnatic been looking stronger. We've heard so much about Yellowstar, but maybe that's a broken record. Really, 2 weeks in, people are still saying, hey, he's back.
I think the jungle matchup will actually be quite an interesting one to keep our eyes on. Spirit versus Jankos. We know Jankos last week, he had a very incredible kill participation in terms of setting up a lot of his team's plays. Is he going to be able to do that against these aggressive picks that we're seeing from Spirit?
It's going to be a super, super hype matchup. It is our, series of the week, match of the week. For me, on the other stream, there is an important matchup going on at the same time, Giants and Unicorns. If you get a 2-0 in that, get 3 points, could very well have big implications for later on in the split.
Yeah, definitely could. And of course, at the end of the day, it is the post-game lobby where we'll break down all of the series today and look forward to week 3 of the summer split with our special guest Freeze from H2K. Now, with a lot of big performances on the Rift so far this summer, we want to hear from you. Get on Twitter and tell us, who do you think is the most underrated player in the EU LCS and why?
I personally actually think Kikis coming in, a lot of people were thinking he's just going to be this tank up in the top lane that's not going to get very many resources, just going to basically be the sponge for G2 while the big superstars and perks in the bottom lane really shine to the top. But he's bringing out Irelia, he's bringing out Fizz, and I feel like he is having a big impact in the top lane for G2.
I think for me, one of the players I'm looking at from Splyce, I know Deficio will get tilted by hearing this, is Cobby, and I'll reason it by saying Deficio and a lot of us at the desk have looked at a lot of performances and said he's good, but everybody else is still not looking at this guy. I think a lot of people have got to take more notice of that.
He put himself on the map since yesterday.
I'm looking at Mickey, I'm looking at Trashy, I'm looking at Wonder, so I think it's fair that, you know, Cobby's there to clean up, and he's good enough to not get caught out, so it's like praise to the guy.
Yeah, indeed. Already a couple of player of the game votes as well. Be sure to hit us up at LOL Esports and include the hashtag EULCS. Remember, tell us who you think is the most underrated player in the EULCS so far. However, time to get into that matchup and get into Splyce that we just mentioned, as they will be going up against G2 Esports. Yesterday, what a performance they had up against Schalke. We thought it might be a tie, but they did incredibly well in those team fights and just cleanly took Schalke down.
They certainly did. Yesterday's game with Splyce, they look like a, well, I don't want to say new team because they showed a very similar performance last week, but compared to their spring split performance, they have definitely been stepping up. What's impressed me the most is after every small pick that they've been able to find, they've immediately turned it into an objective, and I think that is the big shift that we've seen compared to them in spring split.
And one of the nice things for a team like Splyce, when you can look at their spring split performances versus summer with this one change, they're making less mistakes, and because they're making less mistakes, they're not being punished. Whereas they are punishing their opponent's mistakes, which is something that you are afforded when you play clean, when you play safe. So a lot of credit to the squad after revamping in the offseason.
And I think that's where a good mismatch of styles comes in here, because G2 yesterday, they took their first loss against Roccat, and we talk about Splyce, good team fighting, punishing mistakes. Well, if you want to beat G2, seems like that's the way to go, because yesterday, although, you know, game one was pretty good for G2, they couldn't deal with Rockat's team fighting that followed. It was those late game decisions where Perks was going in, the rest of the team wasn't quite there to follow up with him, and, you know, G2 just didn't quite look comfortable with this adapted style with the Irelia. So I now wonder, looking at a game against Splyce, how these two match up, because it could very well be the weakness that lets them down against the young squad that mostly are from Denmark.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because last week, Crepo was talking so much about how when G2 was setting up around things like the Baron, like these big late game objectives, they weren't really setting up properly, and the way in which they executed was always not as good as it could have been. And going up against these better teams, you have to be wary about how easily you can get punished. So G2 showing a bit of weakness in week 2.
Yeah, we saw a bit of that Roccat team fighting, and they're up against Vitality, setting up in the studio right now. And it is a team fighting that has done incredibly well for them, obviously. It seems like when they do get their early game together, it then doesn't work for them late. If they get their team fighting right, then they're making up for something from the early game. So all the ducks are not in a row.
As we said with yesterday's game, you could take the first half of game one, the second half of game two,
perfect.
put them together, and you had a great game from Roccat. But you can see there, overall from yesterday, still not doing so well in the early game. Even though Airwax had some good plays in the first game, it's just not all around for Roccat, and they need to fix that if they want to go up against the top teams here in Europe.
Yeah, up against Vitality, who has also only given us ties, and Roccat as well. So maybe one of these two squads can get ahead here.
What impressed both Deficio and I on the desk yesterday was actually how in game one, their draft was pretty phenomenal against Origin, because they seemed to know exactly what Origin were going to do, and they picked perfectly to play into that. And they had, while it was a slow game, it was still a very well executed game. Moving into game 2, though, the draft was not as good as it could have been.
And this is a problem, because last week they also opted into that last pick LeBlanc, into a team composition that naturally early then win game. Fine, I understand that, but there were so many flaws in the approach. With these hit and miss pick and ban strategies, I think it's a little bit unacceptable. I think this is a team that's been together for a long time. They've got a lot of talent, and that's something where you can instantly give yourself an advantage with the caliber of players that Vitality have.
And you could see how that decision-making in the pre-game in the draft influenced the rest of the game, because the games were very slow yesterday.
Yeah.
They didn't have the tools to create their own destiny in those games. It was like, well, if Origin make a mistake, we can punish really well. But in game 2 especially, there were situations where Vitality looked like they couldn't do anything on the map because of their composition. They did not know how to play like that.
Yeah, coming into this week, they had the slowest wins and the fastest losses. Yesterday, they also had a very slow loss, and knowing that Roccat knows what to do when they get to late game, that might be a problem.
It definitely can, especially if Betsy continues to put on the performance that he has throughout the course of the mid to late game. I think Betsy is a player that once the map is open up and once he's got his teammates around him, he really starts to shine. It was the same last week, it was the same yesterday. So it is a real concern, and it's very interesting that Roccat could be a very legitimate threat to Vitality. That is not something I actually expected to say coming into the split.
No, but it's very nice for us. And without further ado, it is time to send things over to our casters and get on the Rift.
Thank you, Shocks. Daniel C. Dracos here with the one and only Martin Official Lunga as Splyce and G2 ready up for the first game in the best of 2 series.
Get like, woo, from one guy, and that's it.
Thank you,
Thanks.
random guy.
Yeah, love it, love it. Yeah,
Someone's
no, again,
excited about you.
2 teams here, Sifa, who honestly look fantastic coming into this. Yeah, G2 dropped that 1 game yesterday, but it was a very close game against Roccat. And also Splyce, surprising a lot of people. Very confident team now when you talk to them as well. They're like, yeah, we knew we were going to be a top team.
It really feels for them like they took a long time in spring to really sort out what they wanted to do. And they had always told us that they were going to take a while to get things going. And we were skeptical when we didn't see immense improvement over the course of spring. But now, coming into this summer season, they have improved immensely overall. Much better team decision-making, coordination. You called their bot lane the top 3 or one of the top 3 in
I want to
Europe.
make it top 2 even. I actually think that bot lane is top 2 in Europe right now. I only think Sven and Mithy is above them. So I'm looking at that bot lane matchup being extremely exciting. Obviously, the game yesterday from Splyce had a great pick and ban phase as well, so we got to give some praise to Yamato Cannon. That Nivea pick in the mid lane was very smart as one of their counters to the Vladimir, off of his like zone control, obviously. And then G2, we see Mithy, or you just saw Mithy for a few seconds on your screen.
Now Mickey.
Now Mickey, you're going to be switching supports, both of them fantastic bot players, but G2 yesterday in the game against Roccat got outscaled, made some mistakes around Baron, didn't play as well as we maybe expected with Expect in the top lane.
Yeah, definitely kind of some fumbles there on terms of team coordination. Was split pushing sometimes, TP'd in maybe when it wasn't necessary.
Right.
Missed 1 or 2 TPs that were kind of crucial. So a little bit of communication errors there coming out for the team, but definitely still a strong contender despite kind of some of those hiccups.
Oh yeah, I mean, you lose 1 game. Doesn't really matter too much because overall G2 is this team where I look at them as like the Real Madrid or Barcelona of this league here, where if these guys are not always competing for the absolute top spot, if they are not playing well in every single game, I'm actually disappointed because the team is so good with all these star players on the lineup. And again, we talk about Kikis being underrated. Obviously, he's starting today. Expect is not playing. So Kikis is back in. They're just trying both of them, making sure, obviously, that Expect is ready later on. But Kikis right now is the better choice for this team. And he's no longer like a guy we can say, he's not a strong enough top lane. No, he's a great top laner. He's been great here in Europe. He's exactly what G2 needs. So it is a star lineup all across the board.
Yeah, steadily improving. We're going to have to see with those high expectations on them how they improve. But as we get into picks and bans, let's take a quick look at the lineups. Of course, on the blue side in Game 1, it's going to be Splyce. In the top lane, Wonder. In the jungle, Trashy. Mid lane, Senkux. 80 carry Kobe. His support, Mickey. And of course, their coach, Yamato Cannon.
Yamato Cannon behind them, a man we talk a lot about because he's very vocal about his way of playing as well. But they're facing G2 today, another team who talks quite a lot as well about their performance. Kick is in the top lane. We are right now baiting you guys. It is in fact G2 and not Roccat showing up here, but Kikis is still in the top lane.
Keeping you on your toes.
Yeah, we just make sure everyone is ready. Everyone is ready here. We see the lineup. Trick is sitting next to Kikis in the jungle. We have Perks in the mid lane, of course. Sven and Mithy down the bottom lane. Once we pan over and show them, and behind him in the blue suit, looking great, it is Youngbuck.
Fashionable. He knows he's on stage with the Yamato Cannon. He's like, I'm keeping up today.
Exactly. He knew the graphic as well would mess up, so he would be on camera when we introduce the
coordinated.
Everyone can see Youngbuck behind the team here.
We even get the swoop in on that fabulous outfit. But of course, looking at both these teams, we're really surprised to see how well Splyce is doing, and it's really showing for the team as a whole growing here. But we really got to wonder, G2. I actually think you said it's disappointing whenever we see them lose, but I actually think it's good for them as a top team.
It is,
because it puts the pressure on them to improve and kind of reminds them that they're mortal, right? Like they need to improve, they have to keep looking, and if your goal is an international stage, you can't be happy losing games domestically.
And whenever you talk to the top teams and they do lose a game, they're always like, it's okay, because we learn maybe like 5 times as much from losing, because we realized where do we have some issues. You know, maybe it's in the shot calling, maybe it's certain players not understanding their role when they're behind. Different kind of things. Could be pick and ban phase. Obviously, yesterday they couldn't really do much once they messed up at Baron and fell behind, and then you can question, should have changed up the draft potentially, but that's always, again, something for the team to figure out. I think they had a fine draft, but I just think G2 in the end couldn't out teamfight Rocket with the composition they did have.
And we'll have to see if they adapt their draft today. So we get into picks and bans here. Vladimir taken off the table. Kindred as well, one of those champions that we've seen nerf. But Vlad, no surprise here, 100% pick ban this week in the LCS. Definitely a power pick.
Definitely a power pick. It's him up there with 100%. Then we have Nidalee and we have Ryze. Ryze is the only champion who's been banned in 10 out of 10 games. So the funny thing is, when you have a champion that's getting perm-banned in the LCS, it's most likely perm-banned in scrims as well, which means teams don't really get to practice it too much. And then from time to time, you let him go through. You say, oh, you want to first pick it now? Well, if you're not 100% practiced with this champion, we can punish you. So it is always an option to potentially leave the Ryze open. So far, he's not banned.
Really interesting adaptation here in bans as well, though. Trundle, we've seen him be a pretty big threat overall, but the Ezreal coming in as a ban is very odd to me.
I think G2 is actually setting up for this bait with their first pick like Ryze, and then get Caitlyn in the first rotation for G2. It's the best AD carry for both Copy and Sven down the bottom lane. So when you take away Ezreal, you remove the tier 2 options because you want to aim for that tier 1 and then really try and push Splyce over on something like a Sivir or a nerfed Lucian now, obviously much lower range on some of his abilities, which does hurt him in the laning phase and make it easier for Caitlyn to lane against the Lucian. So I wonder if G2 are really going to let that Ryze go through here and kind of force Splyce to first pick it and then get a Caitlyn for Sven. And they are.
Taking their time. They are going to ban out the Braum in the end.
Love it.
Instant Ryze first pickup, of course. Interesting choice from Splyce to ban out the Fizz, something that Wonderware played a lot, but with the Ryze lock-in.
And Caitlyn is coming now, for sure, from G2. It has to be a Caitlyn pick with the Ezreal ban as well, but it's, again, the thing we talk about, how if a champion is banned almost all the time, it's going to be the same in scrims. And when teams don't get proper practice with these champions, they can sometimes fail to execute properly. Or if a team has a specific counter composition ready, like Siege is very good against Ryze, like long range poke is good against him. You can pick an Azir, and you can have one of these comps that want to kite back, and Ryze can never really close the gap and get close to you. So like an Azir Caitlyn comp, as an example, would work against the Ryze.
Really interesting to see, though, how they've adapted. Caitlyn hasn't been locked in quite yet. They're really taking their time on this rotation, but we've seen her rise to kind of the forefront of top-tier AD carries, and they are going to lock it in, as well as this Aurelia. They picked it 2 out of their 2 games yesterday. This is one of those new meta picks that we're seeing kind of rise in popularity, switching back to those carry-style top laners.
And this is something we mentioned yesterday, how the meta is changing. You know, it's no longer just tank top lane every single game. No, there's some split pushers, there's some bruisers in there who can really threaten the back line, or who benefit a lot from the new Rift Herald, obviously, which was changed a few patches ago. So G2 with a very strong first rotation. We mentioned the Caitlyn and why they're picking it. And then, of course, Aurelia, which was the pick for Kikis yesterday. And we know Wonder is a great bruiser split pusher player as well. And with Fizz and Trundle banned, Aurelia has pretty safe matchups, honestly. Like, those are 2 of the champions who can hurt her, the Trundle and Fizz. So Splyce kind of gave G2 a little bit of an advantage in the top lane.
Yeah.
But that's, of course, with them getting the Ryze, which was the entire plan from G2.
And this is a big question, right, is how effective is this Ryze going to be? You talked about it. Not as many opportunities to play it in scrim, and, you know, really betting a lot on this. Giving up these power picks to try to secure this first pick Ryze. Of course, they're going to have a decent second rotation of their own. However, they get the Ashe. We've seen that be rising in popularity. And the Nidalee as well, the former terror of the jungle. A little bit weaker now, but still very aggressive early on.
Definitely still a good pick, often being banned away. But I feel like Trashy is a fantastic jungler when he gets to play like Gragas and these kind of picks that can do well in team fights and set up very easy plays with his team. I don't think when he's playing the likes of Nidalee, in the past at least, he's been that great. But, of course, this is a new Trashy, very improved coming into the summer split, so I want to see what he can do on this champion if he's able to control Trick in the jungle. And also, I like the Ashe pick because it is actually picked often into Caitlyn. You could trade with her early. And then level 6, we know how strong that ulti is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's good that you point out Trashy because he has been the man making things happen in the early game on the side of Splyce, but that's been with Rek'Sai, with Gragas, these people who have CC on their early ganks. And Nidalee, of course, has a lot of raw power. Maybe paired with the Ryze, it'll be a good option. they're going to be facing up against the Zillion, most likely going into the mid lane.
It's going mid lane, and we talk about this with these comps that can kite. Long range composition, a lot of zone control from traps from a Caitlyn, bombs from a Zillion. Again, it's all to make it really difficult for the Rise to have a massive impact. Like, that's the entire composition G2 are drafting here. So, clearly, planned out, got the picks they wanted. We saw Perks play this yesterday, and when you have one of the best AD carries, well, then picking a Zillion makes a lot of sense, because once you go late game, your job is to keep him alive, and he will go crazy.
And something we talked about as well with the Anivia Caitlyn having these kind of zoning options, it feels like something that Zillion fits into as well with the time bombs. You can't walk under that tower when he's threatening to stun you up and Caitlyn's threatening to just keep that chain CC rolling.
Ooh, it's gonna be like Larry will beat Aurelian lane. Yes! Oh! Yes! I love it!
Oh, that's an Alawi. I'm so excited about this. I'm trying to contain myself. I've wanted to cast this champion for so long.
Oh.
This is an interesting choice, of course. Alawi top lane. We saw it once in NA Challenger, once here yesterday in the hands of the Unicorns of Love, Chachi specifically. He did get a solo kill in lane.
Yeah, he was good for 10 minutes, and that was it.
But this is a pretty insane team composition. Ashe sets up, Alawi can follow up, Rise can follow up. It seems risky, but there's a lot of power here.
Yeah, it's a lot of power. I definitely agree, but Splyce's team fighting against what G2 is drafting is not great. I would love to see a Karma here from Mithy just to add even more utility to G2 when they're kiting back, because Ilaoi is not a hard engaged champion by any means. She has no hard CC. Rise obviously needs to run in and then flash forward to lock down a target, and then it's Ashe with the ulti. That's kind of the ways for Splyce to start these fights here. And once you go late game, you get QSS, you get mid kills. This is another good option, honestly. Like, look at this. You have single target CC on the side of Splyce. Well, whoever gets hit by that CC, Mithy will save the guy. So G2 is drafting this a full kite composition versus not, in my opinion, the greatest engage outside of one ulti from your AD carry, which can then get obviously shut down by Tahm Kench.
And I think it's really interesting how Splyce have set this up, because this is a lot of pressure on Kobe and Mickey in the bottom lane. These are the two engage tools here. I mean, Rise is a great follow-up, but you have an Ashe and a Thresh. You need to hit those hooks, you need to hit those arrows. We praise them as being potentially a top bot lane in Europe, and now there is a ton of pressure on them, just to continue to be individual playmakers, and really they're going to have to bring this composition together, because G2 on the opposite side, pretty easy way to play this game. Back away from the team fight.
Very, very simple win conditions for G2, obviously, in what they drafted, but such an exciting pick and ban phase. I really like this patch because so many of these very, very OP champions were nerfed. So even a Rise, you can actually let him go through and then try and pick around him and saying, okay, he got nerfed a little bit, he's still fantastic, but super excited for this, and I love the Alawi as well. Just because it is Alawi, I think against this comp, though, it's super risky.
It's risky, I think, in most situations.
Risky.
It's a very new pick, not a whole lot that we know about it, but man, as we gear up into this game, there's a lot of exciting new picks. Whether you're a fan of the team or a fan of the picks, tweet at LOL Esports, hashtag SPYWin, or hashtag G2Win, depending on who you think will come out on top. This is about to be one insane game of League of Legends, and I feel like it always will be when Alawi is in the game.
Oh yes, you know it's going to be about the early game when Ilaoi is in the game. So just to explain her, insanely strong laning phase can beat almost any champion 1v1 in the early game. Especially when she is level 6, it's a massive power spike for her. It's so hard to play against her because if she runs in melee range of you, like just click W, dash into melee range of whoever you're laning against, press E on him, so you get his clone and you just pop your ulti. It would give 2 tentacles to smacking straight down, doing a ton of damage, really hard to deal with, but she does have a lot of problems.
Absolutely.
Like you can gank her extremely easily.
She's CC-less.
CC-less, obviously.
If you ever have the opportunity to walk away, all of her damage just goes out the window.
Yes, and team fighting wise, she's not reliable. She can have that one team fight where she gets to flash in and like get a 3-4 man ulti, massive tentacles, doing insane burst damage on the entire team. And then the next team fight, she doesn't get anything, or maybe she only gets one target with that ult and she just dies. Because she's building Black Cleaver as a first item. That's what I've seen almost every single time. Trinity Force is another option, but Black Cleaver is just a little bit more effective. And then she goes tank after, so you can deal with her. You can kite her, you can burst her down in these fights. And that's why this G2 composition is going to be so hard for Wonder to play against, because it's all about kiting. and saving people. Oh, you caught one guy. Well, Time Kench and Zillion are here to make it really annoying for you.
Of course, level 6 a little bit far away at this stage of the game, however. Splyce starting on the bottom side. G2 as well, interestingly enough, are going to have vision as the Krugs go down. Mithy making sure they can't get any more experience off of that. We kind of wanted to see the 2v2 lanes here.
Yes.
We wanted to know how these guys would stack up, and we are not going to get the lane swap this time around. Let's talk about this lane matchup a little. Caitlyn, Tom Kench. Seems like you're just riding on that Caitlyn carrying this lane.
It is, yeah. Tom Kench, it's very hard for him to add that much value other than his Q poke, really. He's mainly also there to stop any sort of damage going on to Sven. If a hook connects or Copy gets a great volley on the way, you can always absorb some of the damage with the Tom Kench. But it's not the greatest lane matchup for G2, by all means. And the reason they also walk in to stop the camp is because, like, Tom Kench level 2, it's not very sexy. Not a whole lot is going to happen. So you'd rather stop the enemy from doing a camp than trying to both do a camp each and then rush to 2. And then you're like, I'm Tom Kench, who has not really anything to do at this point. So you just want to deny it. Splyce still gets a double range against the Tom Kench. Means they have the early push.
Yep, of course, still that fast level 2. Have to respect the Thresh death sentence. Looks like Mickey moving up into the jungle, maybe trying to slow down a bit here as Trashy clears out what he can. Top lane, 2 very aggressive champions, but looks relatively even at this stage.
And this is one of the beautiful things about this meta. We all saw it. We all saw it. It's the fact that we have
these... It's a good crowd today, by the way.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I really like that one guy who cheered when we came on screen. That was great. But like when you have these top lane matchups now, compared to a Maokai Echo, where you're kind of boring to watch the top lane matchup, now it's exciting because we have a lot of damage involved, great burst as well. You can actually camp that lane and really snowball one of them. Once Ilaoi gets to push Aurelia on the tower, you can just dive her straight away with the jungler. So I think what we're gonna see here top is really exciting and a great test also for Kikis. Getting rid of the name of a tank-only player, because this is not an easy matchup for him.
No, and he traded so well there for a second, respecting the tentacles, backing off, but then just overcommitted on that Alawi. Got hit. Gonna get
so
hit
annoying.
Again. Oh, this laning phase is so difficult, and when you get cursed up like that, there's just not a whole lot of opportunities to trade back. And still really interesting. Obviously, great use of that dash to just avoid these tentacles, but still so tough for Kikis to trade effectively.
Yeah, and then also you gotta keep in mind Ilaoi with her Q, once he hits a champion, does get a bit of HP back. While of course we have some sustain from Aurelia as well, and Trick realizing what we talked about, that you can actually snowball this lane. Also because Kikis is a bit overextended. Trick is here. First of all, it's counter gank, but also if Wonder goes aggressive, you can then set up the gank yourself.
Moving into the lane, though.
Just showing himself, gonna walk down river. Not really a whole lot.
Maybe trying to relieve a little bit of pressure here on the top side. Of course, Trashy in no position to follow up. Trick clearing out a couple tentacles, but the map seems to be relatively calm at this point, and really, I think we got to keep our eyes on Trashy here. This guy is the early playmaker for Splyce so often. We just have to wonder when he's going to kick it up.
I mean, this is again what we talk about. It's so hard for Splyce to be aggressive in terms of killing. So what you do instead is you just push in the lane over and over, try and poke them down and deny CC. Even the support is worth poking down. If you get him to go back to base, suddenly Sven has to back away as well, and you deny some CS. Instead of killing purely. And once you have the bot lane pressure, your jungler can start invading like this. Yeah, Trick's gonna realize that the Gromp is lost. We'll try and challenge for Wolves.
Trash, of course, level advantage as well as the red buff backing him up. Farm relatively even at this stage. Jungle continuing to be the primary point of contention. However, Elise will get that in the end. Small advantage to Trashy at this stage, but nothing major just quite yet.
And that clearly was the plan here for Splyce with this pick and ban phase and why they picked Italy. Because they realized they have some very strong lanes. You know, Ashe, Thresh is a good 2v2 lane that can push in early. Ryze in the mid lane is a champion who obviously, while he won't have like the greatest laning phase of all time, he can always all in. He has that threat every single time. And then we know Ilaoi is a lane bully up top lane, so there's a lot of lanes that can apply pressure, setting up these invades here from the middle lane. Like, oh, okay, my Ilaoi is pushing, my bot lane is pushing, so I have 2 junglers I can invade now. Try and challenge the Elise in the early game. Because Trashy normally is fantastic on Gragas, right?
Absolutely. An interesting thing here, without the pressure on the map, Trick still going for some aggressive moves to counter jungle. Or Trashy eventually going to find this ward. I was wondering if the buff was going to run out, but we'll clear out that vision. But still pretty aggressive from Trick. Try to move in there.
But every single time you see a jungler invade, just always look at the mid lane. who's pushing at this very, very moment. So because Rise TP'd back into mid, Perkz got 2 bombs down on the minion waves and actually started pushing it, suddenly Trick invaded. Just to place a ward, just small things. It's all about lane pressure, lane control, especially around mid lane. Who can roam first? Who's forced to sit on the tower to see as well? If you are forced to sit on the tower, you have no pressure in your lane. And that means you can't really assist your jungler. And therefore you have to allow the enemy jungler to invade and get a few wards down. Obviously Trashy to get to spot it, so not a whole lot happened. But this game, I'm waiting for it to just explode. I'm waiting for that top lane to start snowballing. I'm waiting for the bot lane level 6 with Ashe, set up a play as well. Double TP on both sides. There's a lot of ways we can get a lot of fights.
Yeah, absolutely. Something we have to be aware of course, level 6 with those top lanes. No moments of aggression yet. Senkux gets pretty forward on there. That's the threat of the all-in you were talking
Every
about.
time.
Has to respect it. Hook. Not quite. Can't even be more than happy to block that one up.
Zilean also is actually a very smart pick into Rise. We mentioned it in the pick and ban phase, like it's single target damage mainly from a Rise. Zilean obviously will save wherever he catches out, and also in the laning phase, you don't really die to an all-in because you have Zilean ulti and you can always double bomb to zone. Zilean is very good at zoning people away with the double bombs, so Rise won't really have the control in that lane. So it's a smart pick to just keep the Rise towards his own tower. So you know what, you're not going to roam anywhere, and we're going to go to these team fights because we can kite you. Bottom side though, wait for it, Sifa.
Oh my gosh, hits on the Kabi. Lantern's there if he wants to make it out. Will make it to safety, but good play coming in from Trick and Kabi. Just a little bit slow on the dodge there.
Trusting in his support though. Always good to see Thresh players understanding when there's a threat of a gank, staying very far back in the lane, ready with the Lantern. Every single time we look top though, it's just Wonder kind of hitting the discount Kikis.
Yeah.
The
Really,
fake Slim Shady.
yeah, the test of spirit here, just so difficult to play against. And Kikis, I mean, you can see it. I thought dodging Vel'Koz's skill shots was irritating. This is the real geometry right here. It's parallel lines. Potentially a dive. Trashy getting aggressive. There's the ultimate. Leap of Faith comes down. Healing comes through. But they're not going to be able to follow that one up whatsoever. Although Kikis, buddy, would
keep dancing.
Fancy feet. Fancy
Not over
feet.
yet. There's no TP to help him.
No.
Tentacles
Are you
everywhere.
kidding me? Okay, we gotta keep it together. Oh! First blood drops for Splyce. That's the long, slow goodbye from Kikis.
Painful to watch. Like, you know you're gonna die, but he just keeps trying to stay alive. We mentioned this, you know, once Ilaoi gets above level 6, gets her ulti here, start pushing in already to tower, well, what happened? Trashy just showed up. It's like, this is a pretty easy dive.
And at the end of the day, Trashy, of course, doesn't get an assist, but he sits behind the tower and says, you're not running away.
Yep.
You go back in there with the tentacles and to die very horribly slowly.
Stand with your tower and the wall and just keep spawning everywhere. It's a proper nightmare.
This is going to be a wonderful replay, by the way.
All right, okay, let's see. A quick kick is this. So this is the first dive. We talk about this. You E onto the target, then you ulti straight away, so you get these 2 massive tentacles smacking down instantly. And now it's basically like, I want to run away, but I can't because there's a Nidalee. I actually think maybe kick is because he had flash. If he just instantly ran away, maybe had a chance.
Yeah, Trashy has no mana, so maybe there is that small opening. But at the end of the day, nice pickup coming in from Splyce. Of course, in the meantime, though, the Mountain Drake was traded back on the side of G2. Has been one of the objectives we've seen contested more frequently.
But I think that's an objective Splyce are okay giving up, just because they got a kill on Ilaoi. Like, when you pick Ilaoi, you need to be aggressive early game in that lane. You need to win that lane, otherwise she has no effect later. Another fight.
Oh, Kikis, he may have bit off more than he could chew. The stay not quite enough for Wonder. A great kill back. My God. From a man who only plays tanks to a man who looks for the solo kills. Kikis' evolution. Get a little bit stunted right here. Trashy moving in. Spear not quite going to land. Snare will come out in just a moment. No, making it to safety. Kikis, though, he's just a little bit too slow. Fancy footwork, buying time for his team. Meanwhile, will eventually drop to Senkux.
Play bottom side, though. Senkux can also TP down.
Here comes the Elise. Stun comes out. Great use of the Lantern there. Try to land the hook, but it's going to miss. TP coming in from Senkux. His mana bar is low, but he may be able to get something. Kabi, not enough footwork to evade those bombs. The point and click comes through. Perkz down, but he's going to be right back up. Wonder looking for a fight. Ult comes in. That's not where you want to be standing. The Keep trying to make their way out of this one. They are going to be able to make it out to safety just barely. Tentacles chasing down Mithy, but what a moment of chaos for both sides.
And we said this game suddenly could just explode. It's another fight.
Kick is moving forward, does not have a way to slow down the Nidalee, but
That was a boring fight. We don't care about that one. But still, suddenly 1v1 kill top. Aurelia, once she gets a few items, small cheap items, Sheen, Stinger, always was a big spike for her. She didn't even have to fully complete the Trinity Force to be strong. She just needed some of the first items for her towards the Trinity Force, and she could actually start all inning. Wonder definitely not respecting the damage. And then the roam from Splyce, instantly G2 reacts, and that's again a smart team. Will always know, okay, they're making a play on top side. They're buying time, they're investing multiple members. Well, we now have a chance to be proactive as well. Instantly go to the other side of the map. They know that there's a numbers advantage, and you have a zillion. So diving is very safe. Great setup.
absolutely, of course. And I once again just have to praise Kikis here. So much confidence in this 1v1 scenario. Dodging those tentacles left and right, making sure the sustain doesn't come out. The intention from Trick is here once again. Board down, looking for the cocoon, not gonna land onto Wonder. Great sidestep, moving in. Not gonna go for the dive on that one. We're gonna have to back off Trashy here as well, but G2, they're not giving up any pressure here on the top side. Wonder is not going to be comfortable any longer.
Both teams, they know how you can snowball that lane. If Alawi does fall behind, once she gets into these team fights, we say it again and again, it's going to be really difficult for Wonder to do anything. Like G2's composition is built around kiting and kiting and kiting, which is the most effective way. Whoops, that's the wrong way.
The misclick there, not at all what you want, but the no button coming in from Mithy. Is it going to be enough? Thick skin available. Not going to burn it yet. Trying to use that gray health.
Oh, ganked up now.
Wonder moving in, may try to turn this one around. Isn't going to have enough time to cast the ultimate. Interrupted, and another kill drops on the top side. But Perks, he could be next. Ultimate comes out. They're going to have to take one more shot at him. Coming back up, flash to safety, trying to make it out. Trashy goes in, wants the kill. Doesn't get it quite yet. Flash forward. Auto to secure it. They're going to grab that one. 3-4. This game.
Love this game.
So much action across the map, Deficio.
Every single lane, something is happening. We know in the bottom side here that G2 are okay kind of giving up that 2v2. They know they're not going to kill Splyce, and instead just try and run away every single time and farm up this Caitlyn, who is your late game weapon. But topside, Wonder is making it too easy. There is not enough control in that topside jungle for Splyce to allow Wonder to keep pushing into these towers. Because every time he pushes in, Trick shows up, and it's a very easy gank. Highlighted multiple times, Ilaoi is not good against junglers who can actually gank early.
And what's interesting is she seems to have the same problem that Gnar does, where if you want to harass, you're pushing the wave, right? Gnar has the boomerang, she has the tentacles, and you're always going to be pushing if you want to trade effectively, whereas Aurelia, she just leaps onto you directly, really easy. So it seems just like an unfortunate circumstances. G2 are going to grab the first tower here.
Yeah, and also keep in mind that Kikis will always take a bit of damage, so his E will always stun. Just Q stun, Elise comes in, cocoon onto Wonderwear, and then he dies. Like, he's so squishy, obviously building for damage items in the start, and we're not seeing Ilaoi pay off at the moment. There's a lot of top lane bans, and obviously an early Aurelia pick, but it's not paying off yet. Because Splyce right now have been trying to focus on multiple lanes. We have a lot to see them just tunnel on one lane, specifically. Take that early tower on top side, bully out that Aurelia, and then move the Ilaoi to a different lane and make it a strong split pusher. Second dragon.
Yeah, we're supposed to talk about this. This is the second Mountain Drake. Could drop to G2, but Trick taking a lot of damage here. Sven and Mithy there to back him up. Splyce are pinging it out, but it looks like they just do not have the tools to contest it. Trashy with the cheeky spear isn't going to be able to take that one away, and that's the second Mountain Drake for G2.
And we've seen this before. Week 1, G2 got 3 Mountain Drakes against Origin. Resulted in a like 2 or 3 second Baron. Just destroyed completely. It is so scary when you play against Mountain Drakes around objectives. It is their Snowball Dragon because it only benefits you if you can be proactive and actually get to towers and Baron and other dragons, obviously. But in this game here, it's even in gold. G2 has a composition that didn't look to do anything really in the early game. They wanted to farm up the Caitlyn. They wanted to make sure Ilaoi didn't snowball. So G2 right now can be very happy with how the early game has been going. And Trick topside one more time, but there are more guys coming from Splyce.
Stun coming in, more on the way, as you said. Leap of Faith goes out, Wonder getting burned down. The healing comes in, though. That's what you gotta respect, but Kikis makes it to safety. Will the fancy footwork be enough? Trashy hunting for the spear. Great stun from Perks.
Ulti.
Ult coming forward. Senkuk's ignoring the target for as long as he can. He doesn't want to pop that. Goes away. Great patience coming in from Splyce. to make that the one-for-one trade in the end.
Yeah, the reason Perkz instantly ulted here onto Kikis, despite him being in the bush, was because he didn't know if there was a ward from Splyce. Seeing as there was no ward, obviously Kikis didn't need the ulti straight away, but that's something we can see, and he couldn't. Had there been a ward, it would have been easy for Splyce to just give him one hit and he would have died instantly, and we would have flamed Perkz for that. Another fight in mid though.
Continues, flash forward from Mithy, going to solve his AD carry, taking that Caitlyn to safety. Senkuk's not done yet though, backs into the trap. Not all you want, great hook from Mickey. No follow-up, has to flash to safety. Ult comes out, is gonna get blocked by Trashy. The action just continuing. Kobbe finally here in the mid lane, however, and it looks like things will calm down for a brief moment.
And we keep seeing two teams trying to be proactive on the map and then the other team always reacting. This time around, it was Splyce getting a bot tower because there were so many guys on top side and the other G2 members had gone to the mid lane. Look at the replay one more time. So Wonder here, early trade, Trick comes in, but look at your minimap. Two guys running from Splyce and TP in from Perkz. Splyce here realizing, okay, guys, we're healthy, we can still go for this. They don't know if there's a ward in this bush here, so Perkz instantly just puts the ulti on Kikis, meaning Splyce can now just wait. Kikis honestly just run away with the ulti. He tried to go in and say like, please kill me, please kill me. But obviously they don't hit him.
Shot. Yeah, Senkuk just waiting to pull the trigger there. Doesn't want to risk throwing those overloads out if they're gonna hit that low health target. So good patience, good performance here. And I gotta say, Splyce keeping up in this early game incredibly well. G2 looking to trade blows across the map, and Splyce aren't missing a beat here.
No, Splyce is a legit top team in Europe right now. They are playing extremely well. Every single member is able to hold his own in lanes. Obviously, we have topside right now losing out, but there's also been a lot of focus from Trick towards that top lane. And then we see, the thing I like the most about Splyce is how consistent they are in doing the right call. Like, macro-wise, they're a smart team now. They understand when to apply pressure on certain lanes, when to contest objectives. Good roaming around here with the Ashe, despite it being 0-1. Farming, getting towers. And now you have this AD carry setup in mid lane.
Mickey throwing out those hooks, almost always hitting home. Sven has to be careful. Mickey the constant bodyguard to save his life in so many circumstances, but
I think Trick is living on top side.
Doesn't matter who's there. It's exactly where he wants to be. Slow comes out, stun, not going to connect. Senkuk's trying to make it under tower and to safety. Nidalee coming in with the spear, hunting down the spider. Not going to be enough as they back off there, but now Kikis roaming into mid lane. Maybe looking for the pick onto Kobbe. G2 poised to collapse here. Kobbe all alone. Lantern comes in, trying to make it out to safety. Minty stacking up an acquired taste. Is going to tank the spear. Tongue Lash comes out. If he wants to get Mickey, he can. No, arrow comes in. Nope. Trick backing up as well. Mickey throwing the hook, but it's just going to hit a Spiderling. Trade of cooldowns there. G2 taking the advantage here in the mid lane, though, and starting to push in.
So once again here, G2 managed to swap the lanes first, so Kikis had a push on bottom side, allowing him to roam mid, while Wonder is still pushing towards the tier 2 towers. You can see in your minimap, and that little roam forces Splyce to obviously move into the river, move away from tower, and therefore an easy pickup from G2. Very small things. Who pushes first? Who has the priority in these lanes? Who rotates first? Always allowing you to roam around the lanes, get a bit of damage on towers. Wonder's doing the same on bottom side, realizing he can't get the full tower, therefore has to run away.
Very interesting, as we can see, moving forward in the game. Alawi looking like Sunfire Cape next after the Black Cleaver, so tanky stats as you predicted. Aurelia keeping with the standard aggressive build here, going into that Hex Drinker.
Yeah, we've seen two types of Aurelia builds. There's the Trinity Force Ghost Blade and then tank, or there's the Trinity Force straight into tanky items. Like I'm gonna put Hex Drinker in there, it gives some resistances for her. And not like get a Ghost Blade, which is a very aggressive build you can go for. Very strong in 1v1s and when you have to take out an AD carry. But in this game here from Kikis' side, because his team composition is also built around team fighting, he's probably now just gonna build tank and just be a frontline. Still a threat against an Ashe, for sure. But he's not gonna be that late game monster carry, because he doesn't need to be. That's gonna be your Caitlyn in this game, who's currently sitting on 1 kill, top farm in the game, 2 items completed, 20 minutes. Everything is set up for G2 to take these late game team fights.
Absolutely, of course. 2 items for Caitlyn. Happy to be at that stage. Ashe lagging a little bit behind here. Just the difference in farm. Sven taking another hook, but Mithy on point with those note buttons. Good accuracy from Mickey, just not really mattering against the Tahm Kench. Oh, running forward, stun. Set to come out. No proc on the ultimate, but Perkz will make it to safety there. Good trade coming in from Senkuk's.
Same as we have seen all laning phase. Ryze has the all-in potential. Brazilian will try and kite you back and run away and just keep the lane even at all times. TP is ready for both guys one more time, which means we could see a big fight on the top side. Kick is pushing in. You can see Sven is rotating. Trick and the rest of G2 aiming for that top tower.
Mithy, of course, channeling the ultimate there. Not quite sure if they wanted to dive that one. Do decide to back off in the end, but some big map movement going down. Moving forward, though, very interesting how the lane phase has kind of continued to extend here.
Yeah, and keep looking at health bars. If there's a trade, which we don't see on the screen, suddenly that can set up a TP play. You can see the Rise constantly going aggressive on perks, because that sets up Splyce to make a good play on top side where Rise can TP in with full HP, and a Zillion might join in with like 40%, giving a big advantage to Splyce. So all these small trades in the side lanes are important for the next big play. No one wants to go too aggressive under a tower at this point. Sadly for everyone, it's a Cloud Drake coming next, so no one is really happy about that.
Boy, of course, Alawi just continuing to be a bother on the top side, harassing as much as she can, but G2 clearing out these waves, putting a lot of farm into this Caitlyn, but not really looking for a fight quite yet.
And G2 simply not able to really move forward, because every single time they look at the bottom lane, Perkz is pushed back to his tower, or he's forced to go back to base, because the Rise just has the control in that lane at the moment. That means Splyce can constantly move him from bot lane to mid lane, potentially TP to top side, and be stronger right now. He's obviously a much better champion 1v1 compared to a Zillion, who benefits from being with his team. And therefore there is one lane at least Splyce is winning. It was supposed to be 2 lanes, because the Ilaoi was supposed to win the other lane, and then you had 2 winning side lanes on the side of Splyce to play this 1-3-1. But because of all the camp from G2, or the camping on the top side, Ilaoi has been shut down, and she is a bit weaker than what we are used to seeing.
Of course, excellent play from Trick to focus down on that top lane. Not a champion a lot of teams are comfortable playing around, but saw that solo kill come out from Chachi yesterday. They knew they didn't want that to be the fate of their top laner. Just so much damage on that pick, even if the CC just isn't there. Ward goes down. Crowd goes wild. Things relatively...
The one guy again.
The one
He's
guy
a very
again.
happy guy.
The hero.
I like him.
Stun going down. Trashy taking a decent amount of damage, but hard passage. I feel like Thresh and Tom Kenshi are both just playing spoiler to all of these pick opportunities.
Yeah. Both guys.
I feel so bad for Kikis.
Able to save someone, but not really save Kikis. It's hard to save him in his tentacle nightmare up here.
I've never had that nightmare.
No?
No. Thank God no one plays Alawi.
You're not into that kind of
elo.
stuff?
Not into that, truly. Just sneak that in there.
We've all been there, Sipa. We've all been there.
I've seen enough top lane to know where this is going. Or stun comes out. Thresh no longer with the dark passage. Flash over the wall, though, just as good. Backing off down this one. Pings on the Cloud Drake going down. Now, while the movement speed buff may not be worth too much, we have to remember that it will make Elder Dragon that much more valuable, but it is going to be the trade for the top lane tower in the end. 400 gold for Wonder. Not sure if that was worth it.
Well, I mean, for G2, it's about getting that next dragon to spawn, and because you already got 2 Mountain Drakes, you want to build up even more for potential Elder Drake later. And this top tower would have gone down anyway. That's why Kikis just left the lane. He's like, you know what, guys? I can't get any help because we're doing a dragon, so I'm just going to leave it. I know Ilaoi is going to take it or dive me with their Nidalee. So wisely, he just backs away. He kind of tries to lose the lane gracefully at this point. He's actually going for Ghostblade, it seems, as his next item, which I think is very risky. I need to see if he can actually late game out-duel the Ilaoi 1v1. Otherwise, to me, going to tank from here would have been better for what you want to do with your composition, because he's still losing that 1v1 top and losing the 1v1 on the bottom side. So G2 is under a lot of pressure, despite getting all the dragons. And they're not really able to make these aggressive plays, because if they go too many members to one lane, they're going to lose something in the opposite lane.
Absolutely, and of course, only a 1k advantage for Splyce. Splyce behind in dragons, but until G2 are able to push and utilize those Mountain Drakes, the priority on those objectives just isn't worth too much, and we're really, I think, just waiting for this Caitlyn to scale up forward, approaching that 3rd item. Definitely a good spot to be if they can get to that stage, but Splyce have a lot of time here to make a move.
And that's why we call the Mountain Drake the Snowball Drake, because once you are pushed back on the map, Mountain Drake gives you nothing. Like absolutely nothing you need. But if you do get to a Baron, start setting up with pink wards, the other team now has to realize the normal timer in their head being, okay, how fast can like this composition take a Baron? It gets changed because it's 20% extra damage. So it's a massive difference. And sometimes you can get caught off guard. You're like, oh, we thought it would take them at least like 10 seconds or 12 seconds. Suddenly it takes 6 or 7. And therefore you react too late, and then the Baron is gone. So you always have to be careful.
Party
Trick, going for top.
Top lane. Trick using that tentacle to hop in here. Wonder getting burned down. Team tempted to dive the tower, but no better than to leap into that face of Alawi. But meanwhile, Splyce are pushing every single lane. G2 just a little bit behind after that play. Italy onto the bottom side. Kickus may be under threat here. Tower is set to fall. Splyce continuing to extend this gold lead, and G2 just seem a little bit lost on the map right now. They are now moving into the mid lane, but Splyce is poised to collapse here.
Again, Splyce is able to execute their composition here in the mid game or early late game. Who got the perks? A little bit of damage. Don't get too hypey.
Waiting.
Nothing happened there, Sifa. I'll take the play-by-play from here.
You're good. I'm
Yeah.
just waiting.
Hook
Until the
in.
Tom Kench eats somebody, nothing's gonna happen.
Exactly. Then you can jump in after.
Exactly.
But Splyce, again, able to play these side lanes really well. G2 with, as you said, a bit of a aggressive, a little bit too risky play, honestly, investing so many members on one side and then losing another tower. So what we normally see in these situations is a team is trying to like set up a TP gank or a TP fight when someone is hitting that tier 2 tower. You're like, okay, now you overextended, now we're gonna TP in with our Irelia, and then we're gonna like jump straight for the fight with Zillion there, with Caitlyn roaming. Remember, you can use Tahm Kench ulti from lane to lane. But in this case, there was G2 just going for basically a gank, where there was no tower, there's no siege happening, and Splyce got a free tower, so they're definitely able to use the 1-3-1, but goal lead is not that massive. And now we start getting this Baron set up. Remember the double Mountain Drake. Remember G2 wants Splyce to run at them. They're starting it straight away.
Have to be careful here, though. The Alawi can be such a terror, and Wonder does have that TP available. Traps, making sure Splyce will not be able to enter the area comfortably. But the vision starting to be cleared out. Sven getting aggressive now. Perk's gonna tank the hook. TP coming in. This could be the fight. Kickus into the back line. Elise is here to back the team up, but they are going to be able to grab one. Wonder in the middle. Test of faith. Leap of faith. Everything coming through there, but the Kickus still going to be able to grab the kill in the end. Alawi not offering what the team needs. Splyce tails between their legs, running away from this one. Kickus moving forward once again. Equilibrium strike comes out, not going to find it. Perk's looking for the cheeky stun. Isn't gonna grab it. They're gonna back away, but 2 quick kills picked up by G2.
And there's a setup for G2. We've been hyping for the last few minutes around that Baron. Instantly, you put up the Caitlyn traps and you just start the Baron because you know Splyce has to react instantly and try and stop you. But Splyce weren't in position. Multiple angles that came in from, and suddenly G2 gets a few picks. Onto Baron again. 3 members here to defend.
Trashy throwing in spears, not a whole ton of mana. Senkux, similar spot. Baron will drop for G2. They're gonna back off, sating their taste for blood. At least for a little while here.
Man.
Huge shift.
Yeah, again, it's so much about G2 not falling further behind from this 1-3-1 they were against. And then suddenly you get this opening where they can get a quick engage. And now you don't really care about this Alawi. Yes, it looks fancy, multiple tentacles smacking down on people, but the one guy who's dropping low, well, there's a Zillion ulti. There will also be a Tahm Kench to devour him. And Splyce couldn't properly get to the backline also because they weren't there at the same time. Like, people came in a few seconds delayed.
The 2 things I want to point out there are that Kabi using that Ashe ultimate on to the Irelia, definitely not ideal, of course, with so much tenacity on that champion in the thick of these team fights, and as well as just a nice option to just kind of limit the healing with that Morel and Nomicon, because the second the Alawi drops low, I mean, if she's stays around 50%, she's going to heal up to full every time those tentacles smack in a team fight situation. But the burst that they used, just completely eliminating her as a threat in that fight.
And I obviously made a mistake here with Kiki's build because he wasn't going Ghostblade, he was just going to upgrade his Hexbringer, and then he went tank. So in the end, while I was completely wrong in the way I explained it, we're happy because he actually went tank. But definitely well done here by Kikis, and a mistake from my side. Only mine. I'm not gonna drag you down with me.
Really? I mean, you're so active.
I mean,
doing so usually.
Yeah, I know. You didn't help me, right? Just set me up to fail.
Absolutely.
No, definitely.
Always my goal, Deficio.
I completely forgot that Dirk is part of it.
Of course, G2 though, making sure that they use this time while under the effects of the Baron buff to secure that dragon. Picking up their 4th of the game. Now moving forward, of course, next major spawn is going to be that Elder Dragon. And
instantly your 1-3-1 just breaks. Because now you have no map control, you lost the Baron, and G2 gets to siege on these towers exactly like they wanted to. 3 items on the Caitlyn. a situation where Splyce has to run straight at him to do anything, and that's what G2 want you to do. Like, please run at us, please try and fight us, because we will beat you every time. Splyce can only really win this game if they are split up, if they're fighting in multiple lanes at once. Because now Thresh has no value at this point, because whoever he hooks will just get devoured by Tahm Kench. Ashe Arrow again, you're not going to catch anyone out because G2 is running together. So we need to see a massive outplay. Splyce like flashing straight for Sven, where Perkz is like ulting the wrong guy or whatever. To outplay on one side and a misplay on the other side almost for G2 to start losing these fights. Mickey's trying again and again and again. Always takes a few hits for it though.
And this is the unfortunate reality of playing against a comp like this, is that once you give it an advantage, once they can set up these siege with these Zillion bombs and those Caitlyn traps, you're just slowly going to get choked out of the game. 1-3-1 no longer on the table. Maybe once the Baron buff finally expires, they'll be able to get back something, but the goal lead now extending 3K in favor of G2, and the aggression just continues. Sven making the most of that mobility buff from Zillion. Just throw down some harass.
I mean, best feeling as an AD carry, even if you get hit by skill shots, it's not gonna matter because someone is there to save you. Like right now, it's Sven, and then there's like 3 dogs running around him, just helping him every single time. 3 best friends for Sven. And no matter what happens for him, he's gonna get saved. Like if he dies first, it's most likely the team who messed up and actually not him, which is the weird thing.
Yeah, have to see. Oh.
Not dead yet, guys.
Saved up by Mythy. Don't even want to let that one expire. No better than to spend any time in enemy territory, but they move forward. Great leap into the air there. Mickey, though, still going to land the hook. Excellent. Caitlyn all comes back. Kick us on the side. Alawi TPing in. This is the flank. Ult comes in. Great use to cancel the ultimate. Continuing forward. The Alawi may be unkillable, but you can't stay on top of the target. Now finally starting to go down. Kickus trying to trade back 1-for-1. Wunder so hungry for blood, but not able to grab too much. Test of Spirit on the Kickus, but he knows this game. He knows the fancy footwork.
And basically what Wunder did here was he started the animation for his ulti and then he flashed straight away, so he managed to get multiple members. You can start the animation, then flash in, and then you will still get the proc on 2, 3, 4 guys. So it's a great setup, but there's no one who can set these team fights up for Splyce. No one could like lock G2 down in place, so when you had that 4-man Ilario ulti, it would win you the fight. No, they just ran out of it straight away. They just kept kiting back. Splyce's composition struggle so much at this point, and it all actually goes back to the early game where G2 managed to shut down Ilario so much in the start that Splyce never had these 2 snowballing side lanes with the Rise and an Ilario just going crazy, getting a massive goal lead, getting the Dragon control, and therefore not losing an early Baron as well to double Mountain Drake. But because G2 got so many early kills, yes, they fell behind in the mid game, but as soon as they got over to Baron, snap, that's it.
Absolutely, and you just look how hard it is to start these team fights. We're talking about Tahm Kench, Elise who can just leap into the air to deny that engage, Zillion who can save any member, Aurelia who's impossible to CC.
Yeah,
and those
has
team
a
fight
GA
circumstances.
as well. Like you don't want to kill Aurelia, you don't really want to kill the Elise.
I mean, Elise has a GA2 at this stage of the game. G2 absolutely in control of this game. Now, Splyce aren't out yet, but it's going to take, as you said, either a major mistake from G2 or the huge moment of outplay on the side of Splyce.
Yeah, we need to see a situation where Sven gets a little bit cocky and like they have to burn a Zillion ulti to save him, and then the re-engage happens from Splyce and they take him down. They're trying one more time to force something, but double GA on top side. Wunder alone under, not even the bottom side, the mid lane. Arrow coming in, hits Sven.
He's gonna hit Sven.
Nope.
Quick devour from Mythy, but with Zencuck's on the back line now, trying to burn through him. Tentacle Slam goes down, not a whole ton of damage, but Trick and Kickus are on the flank, moving in. Moving forward, Wunder taking a lot of damage, all comes out, trying to sustain up. He's healing so much. Morellonomicon, though, denying half of that. Moving forward, a lot of aggression from Splyce, but once again, G2 have the freedom to just back away from these exchanges.
And still have the Zillion ulti ready. Perkz didn't get to use it in the last fight. And one more time, it's Splyce constantly trying, but simply not able to get the right engage. They need a double flank, double TP in. 2 different angles, preferably from Splyce. Straight onto Perkz, I'm almost going to say, because you expect to be on Sven, but if you can get on Perkz first and maybe force him to ulti himself and then switch target to Sven, you might have a chance. But again, we're talking very, very small percentages. It's definitely G2 who needs to misplay a fight.
Absolutely, and this is really the last chance for Splyce to come back. Baron now live, Elder Dragon on the way. Not a bad start. Get those tentacles down and spawning, but so hard to get through these choke points, and G2 burning down the Baron. Splyce TPing in, this could be the fight. Here comes Rise onto the front lines, maybe looking to make a play. Perk's taking a lot of damage, Wonder dishing out so much as well. The exhaust goes down, Kikis takes one on the backside. G2 now moving forward, no longer do they have to run. They've got the advantage, tentacles coming out. They get the Baron, they get everything they want in the exchange. The double kill for Kikis. Mithy taking his time to make sure Wonder drops, and the game moving forward. No way you can say Kikis' thirst for blood here as he's going to try to chase down Kabi, but at the end of the day, G2 absolutely dominate that fight.
And one more time, it's G2 starting the Baron, double Mountain Drake, burning it down so quickly, and therefore Splyce doesn't get a proper TP engage here. They just have to kind of run in one by one. They actually did go for Perks, as we talked about, like try and burn his ulti. Perks decided not to ulti at all and just died, but the rest of G2 were still winning the fight, and full control for the last 10 minutes.
Absolutely. The second they found the one win in the team fight that they needed, their comp was able to take off unkillable through the help of that Tahm Kench. And G2 have to be happy to snag that first win.
And this is one of these games I really like, where in the pick and ban phase, you can really see what both teams are trying to do. And then in-game, you can see when it's working, and then when it stops working. Especially on the side of Splyce. But it was very clear what both teams had to do to win the game. And if a very big thing went wrong for either comp, they could instantly lose the game. So like, if this Ilaoi had gone rolling, or started rolling in the early game, if it's been a great start, you know, for Splyce, split up in 1-3-1, G2 were under so much pressure, they wouldn't have gotten all these dragons. All of a sudden, they could have lost even more towers, and then it would have been Splyce setting up a Baron instead. But early camping on Ilaoi, Wonder playing too aggressive at times as well, suddenly meant that the snowball never really started for Splyce. And then G2 just played around objectives.
Exactly, and I really like that. At the start of the game, I was so critical of them for trading towers for these early dragons that may not have been as impactful, but we saw how strong those were once they were finally at the stage of the game when their team comp was strongest. And I think it was smart decision-making. We know we can't fight you, so we'll just trade. We don't ever want to be on the same side of the map as you. And they make it work. And finally, when their team wanted to group up and come together, all it took was one mistake from the side of Splyce to really blow this game wide open. You talked about it from the start of the game. That's the moment we were waiting for, and unfortunately, Splyce just did not have the setup to really turn that game around.
As soon as G2 were able to set up for Baron, 5 traps down, pink ward on the Baron, double Mountain Drake, and start that Baron, it was basically over for Splyce. Because then they had to pull off that crazy team fight, and they didn't manage to do it. They got caught out a little bit in the mid lane, ends up coming in very late for that fight as well, and the fight was lost, and they're like, okay, our split pushing is gone. They have Baron now. The Caitlyn is on 3 to 4 items at this point, and has a zillion Tahm Kench to protect the Caitlyn. Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, with Ilaoi, of course, you have so much damage, so much theoretical sustain for her in those team fights, but every time she drops low, just got so rough for them. But of course...
You just run away from Ilaoi, right? Like, yeah, the ulti looks fancy, but it doesn't CC you. It's just slapping you in the face. That's all.
Interesting. Well, we'll have to see. We've talked about Ilaoi. We'll have to see how the analyst desk feels about it, so let's send it over there so they can talk more about that first win from G2.
And we want to talk more about Ilaoi. Of course we do. We're going to start by taking a look at the picks and bans in general, though. Before we saw the game play out, Vedius, who would you give the advantage to?
So I'd heavily give the advantage over to G2. They drafted really well. Again, Mithy saving this Tahm Kench pick till the very end seems to be a thing that G2 like to do, holding on to that support so that they have the counterplay available. And I think it was very evident what Splyce were going for. You have the Ashe, you have the Rise, Nidalee, Thresh, Ilaoi, all very heavily based on single target damage. And what's great against that? Oh, well, you've got the Zillion to keep that single target alive. You've got the Tahm Kench to provide peel for that single target. And it's just, it was a very nice draft that G2, it seemed like they were reading exactly what Splyce wants to do and reacted perfectly.
It tells you a lot, though, the way they prioritized on how they want to play as a team, and also how they value the meta right now, because first pick Irelia, this is now 3 games on 6.11 where they've gone Irelia. We don't care what everything else is, just give us that. So very interesting to see the only team really doing that right now. We know other people are kind of toying with Irelia, but I like it from G2. The Tahm Kench, I feel, helps them in so many ways, because yesterday we saw Perkz go in on his own and kind of die. Now they've got a Zillion, they've got a Tam Kent, they've got all of these options that are here to say, hey, we can save each other if we overextend.
I'd actually love to know what you guys think about that evolution in G2 and the way they're drafting. Obviously, it just seems in this you could say, hey, it's kind of protect AD carry, it's kind of wanting to go Sven, letting him go ham. Obviously, there's playmaking potential on Zillion, but there's also that ult, and those are not the picks you would normally associate with Perkz. Do you notice a shift?
Well, it's quite interesting in how they seem to be very reactive. So some teams, if we just take Vitality yesterday, they had a plan going. They knew exactly what they wanted against Origin because they had a good idea of what Origin were going to pick. Whereas G2, they first picked the Irelia, followed by the Caitlyn, which both champions, very safe, or at least in G2's eyes, very safe. They can fit into a number of different compositions. If you want, you can go 1-3-1, you can go 1-4, or you can turn that into a team fight comp. You have many options. They see the Nid and the Ashe, and then they're constantly reacting. So the fact that G2 have gone to this playstyle of, we're just going to adapt to you, as opposed to we have a set playstyle that we just want to play, I think is quite unique.
Obviously, a long time in this game, Splyce was trying to push all the lanes, but then it came to a mid-game team fight, which decided a lot of the direction of the rest of the game, rather. We're going to take a look at that because it also kind of shows what they can do with their comp.
This is the problem that you have with the pick potential. You can see they lock down Kikis here, and they put so many resources into killing him with Wonder on the front line. And if there's not enough setup for Alawi to get the DPS down, people just kind of walk out of her damage. The Irelia then comes back to life, and G2 are like, well, the one target you tried to kill is no longer dead, so good luck trying to deal with the rest of it.
And I think that's my difficulty with the Alawi pick. We've seen so little of it that it's very hard to place its exact strengths and weaknesses in competitive. But what I have started to see is that if an Alawi doesn't dominate a laning phase, get so far ahead that when those tentacles smack, they take like a third of your health away. If you don't get to that point, it's difficult to get that amount of damage and tankiness. You don't have the crowd control so much as Deficio was talking about. So I'm still struggling to see the exact strengths of her in team fights, but you know, there is some sense of purpose.
I mean,
there.
Here also the teleport from Senkox came in really late, and he also doesn't have a way to nail everyone down, so maybe that was also off a bit.
This is the big thing for me when it comes to Alawi. She's really good in laning phase. She's really good at being a split pusher. And in teamfight, she has the damage. But I feel like she's very reliant on other people to say, we're going to hold everyone here for you so that you can get that damage down. And as Stress was saying, if you don't have the items, if you don't have an insanely dominant laning phase, paired with the lack of CC that your team just isn't providing, then you're not setting up your Alawi for success. And this is why I'm not liking that we're always pairing a Nidalee with an Alawi so far. I'd like to see some variation.
It wasn't banned. Maybe a Zyra Ashe lane would have been really good for the lane, and it would have set up the Alawi.
We saw a Mumu and LCK.
Okay, it's something like that.
I honestly think a Mumu Alawi would be a fantastic combo, just in an ideal fantasy world. But I mean, that's the sort of CC that
everyone
I'm
loves a Mumu. He has a lot of friends. Player of the game in this run from G2. We decided to give it to Trick. A lot of standout performances on the team, but Trick, as always, setting up so many things for G2.
During the early game, and guaranteeing that the Alawi couldn't run away with the game, abusing the fact that Alawi has no ability to escape, and it's pretty much, if it overextends, you just get caught.
Well, that is one win on the board for G2, and while they were taking that game over Roccat in the arena, Vitality and Roccat have been slugging it out, and they are still doing so, Stress.
Yeah, you wouldn't even believe this game. The start of it would be exactly what we were talking about with Roccat not having the best start of the game. They were down 1,000 at 10, down 3,200 at 20 because they were trying to make plays and were overextending. Then they take a 33-minute fight, down 8.2k gold, take the fight, put Vitality on the back foot, take a Baron, quadra kill for Steelback, everything they need out of that guy. And in the last couple of minutes, while we've been wrapping up the G2 series, Vitality have actually managed to hold on by taking a Baron play. There was a nice split push by Nukeduck to hold Vitality in the game as well, to hold their inhibitors. It's a crazy game, as you can see, 48 minutes in
and Dragon
these
just
two.
spawned.
Elder Dragon's up, Baron's off the table. Like, this is Rocat's real time to actually shine here, because we've spoken about their late game team fights. If there's one kind of setup that they want, it's this sort of game against Vitality.
And it's interesting because something that we were discussing earlier on the desk was how yesterday Vitality really struggled to press that go button against Origin.
Oh, it's going down. Here we go.
We could do with a play-by-play on this one at this point, but
do your best.
I mean, Roccat, this is where they got to be careful. You're talking about the engage. Vitality want to fight this.
Here comes the engage. Nukeduck gets a really nice multi-man ultimate off, but you're into a Kindred ultimate.
Well, we'll just keep talking about it then.
So actually, this is actually really well played so far from Roccat. They're making sure to just keep all the major damage dealers of Vitality at bay, using the Kindred ultimate to buy time, and now they're going to get the kill onto the main front line of Vitality, and they should guarantee themselves the Elder Dragon.
Oh, hang on though. Cabochard just fell from Betsy. Now Reyes and Betsy, if they can deal with Rhea here, they might actually have enough. It's only really Mighty Bear that's still alive. I think Rocket have got this.
Steelback does so much damage in these team fights, and because there just isn't enough lockdown from Vitality using all that crowd control very early on, Roccat with Steelback great positioning, they just end up cleaning up the fight, and they're going to close out the game.
They're going to take it. I mean, we were talking about how the game's still going on. The game ends while we're talking about it live here on the Analyst Desk. Steelback and the rest of Roccat late game team fights. Whew.
Yeah, we can see it there. Roccat is cleaning that game up. Good job on the play-by-play by that first for you guys.
Yeah, I thought we were going in. Turns out we can finish the game here. No, that was a crazy, crazy game. Roccat, do it again. Man.
It's like that.
Good stuff.
They should have a logo being like, we don't need early game.
No, we'll play late game. In any case, Roccat taking that game over on stream 2 on EULCS 2. And here, Splyce and G2 are readying up for their game 2 on EULCS 1 in the arena. We need to take a break after all that action. Stay right there. We will be right back.
And say something and like act like you're being a coach.
Yes, because if I don't talk for too long and because cameras.
Not over yet. There's no TP to help him.
No!
Tentacles everywhere.
Are you kidding me? Okay, we gotta keep it together. Oh! First blood!
I can go. Set, no flash first.
I will spray Kikis, I will spray you.
Chill out, no flash, chill out.
Exhaust goes down, Kikis takes one on the backside. G2 now moving forward. No longer do they have to run. They've got the advantage. Tentacles coming out. They get the Baron. They get everything they want. G2 have to be